Okay, so what we're going to talk about is drawing in Photoshop. Okay. So mostly I'm going to be talking about brushes. So if I hit B, I get my brush selection. Okay. So I'm going to go through some of the options here. So up on the top here, I can adjust the opacity of my brush. So currently it's on black, so it comes out black now. If I take this and I drop it down to 50%, I'll give it 50% gray. Okay. This is your flow, so if I bring this all the way down, can't see anything. If we bring it about 50%, there's your flow. So what it's doing is it's how often it's putting down a circle, because when you do a line, it's actually a series of dots. Okay. And I usually just leave that at 100%. I'll leave my opacity at 100 as well. Okay. So you have these little radio buttons right here. So if I click this flow, or this one next to the flow, this will allow me to taper my brush size just through my pen pressure. So that's pretty awesome. And if I click this one here, this will affect the opacity of it through my pen pressure. So the harder I push, the darker it gets. Okay. If you want to adjust your brush size, a couple ways you can do it. One, if you hold down Alt and right mouse button, you get this little red dot. And then while you're holding down Alt and right mouse button, if you drag left and right, it makes it bigger or smaller. Okay. If you use the bracket keys on your keyboard, right bracket makes it bigger, left bracket makes it smaller. Okay. You can also come up here, hit this button, and then there's your sizes right there. And the other way, if you just hit your right mouse button on your document, you get that same size thing right here. Okay. If you wanted to draw a horizontal or vertical line, it's pretty easy. If you hold down Shift, click and drag, there it is. Shift, click and drag, boom. If I want a line from here down to this corner, if I hold down Shift and click, zoom, there it goes. It will taper. So I don't know if this will work with the taper. Yeah. So you just got to turn this guy off if you don't want the taper in there. Okay. If you right click, you also have brushes that are preloaded in. I have a little bit more than you guys probably will. But these are all pre-made brushes that you can select from, and each one works a little bit differently, looks different. Okay. You have this little like grass one. And you'll notice on some of these brushes, like if you select the soft brush here, you have this little harden. So if I just click, see how it's kind of foggy looking? And if I bring that harden all the way up, it doesn't have that anymore. So that's what that harden does there. Okay. Again, if I right click and I want more brushes, if I hit this little cog right here, I have all these brushes. Some that I've installed on my computer and others that come preloaded. But there's like a set of brushes you want to get. So square brushes, I have those loaded in already, but I'll load them in again. So square brushes. It's going to ask you want to replace it because it's already in there. So I'll say OK. Yeah. Boom, whatever. And now there's my square brush. And that's how you can load in brushes if you download them off the internet. So I'll show you about editing brushes. So I have that brush there. It's got a nice style to it. I like that, but I want it to be broken up in the middle a little bit. So one of the things I can do is I can either come up to this little icon here. You guys might not have that. It says brushes. Or I can come up to Window, Brush, or I can hit F5. And I'll get this little palette that opens up. Okay. So we have some options here. We can affect the size in here. So this is another place you can actually affect your brush size. Leaving it as is, I think is fine. You can adjust the angle of your brush. So that little alpha here, it's changing how it's actually displayed. We can change the spacing because again, what it's doing is it's dropping dots on our line, and we're saying how close are those dots to each other. Okay. There's also a scatter feature. So we can put a lot in there, and then we can say scatter out. Maybe I'll reduce it down a little bit. So it'll scatter them out. And have both axes and just one axis. So that's nice sometimes when you want to get a little sketchy looking. I'm going to go back to the shape dynamics to show you this, guys. The angle jitter is really nice. So if I go back to my spacing and separate that out a little bit so you can see it. So shape dynamics, angle jitter, it rotates those guys. That's really nice to have. Your minimum diameter. So if you have it to where you can control your pen pressure, or your pen pressure controls it tapering, this is the low end of that taper. So it's saying you can go down to 0%, or you can have it if you want to display something. That'll be the smallest it gets. Right, there. So it's good to know. Okay. So then there's texture, and you can do dual brush. I'll talk about that in a moment. Color dynamics, which is having it flip in between colors, your foreground and background color here. Transfer is how it actually moves from your brush onto the canvas. It's kind of like your opacity. Noise, wet edge, all that stuff. So you can check those out. I just really want to talk to you about the dual brush settings here. So with the dual brush, what it's going to do is we have this right here. This is our base. And what I'm going to say is I'm going to come in here with this texture and etch out some more of that. Okay. And now we can see the big difference between where I started and where I am now. And I can do a scatter, I can do a count, I can do all the basic stuff in here as well. So now I can get something that looks like that. So this would be really good for doing like shrubs or something like that if I was doing like a forest. So off in the distance. And as we get further up, I might make this a little bit bigger. So just kind of an example of what you can do with it. Just kind of break it up. Okay. So that's an example of using the dual brush to make a new brush. And you can make countless of different adjustments with these brushes here. So it's really nice. So. Okay, so the other thing I want to show you is how to make a brush from a picture. So if I have this guy and I'm like, I want to make a mountain range, or I want to have a rock texture, I have this guy here. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm actually going to use my lasso tool. So I'll hit L, and I'll actually use the magnetic lasso tool. So that one right there. And then I'm just going to click and drag around the edge here. Now it's not going to be perfect, but that's okay. I just want to get close right now, and I'll go back and fix it up later. I'm just trying to get my rock for the moment. There we go. And then what I'll do is I'll hit Control X to cut the rock out. Actually, no, I won't. No, I won't. No, I won't. And then I'll come over here and I'll switch to my basic lasso tool. And now if I hold down Alt and click and drag, that'll remove some of my selection. So and in case when you were doing the magnet lasso tool, it did something like this. If you hold down Shift and then click and drag around the area that you want, it'll include that in your selection. Okay. After you're happy with your selection, you hit Control X, that'll cut the image off, and then Control V will paste it back in on another layer. And now this is what we got. So what I could do with this guy is I'm going to make him a little bit smaller, rotate him a bit. Okay. And then when we make a brush, we want it to be the image to be squared. So I'm going to hit C for my crop tool here. And then I'm going to hit M first. Sorry, to get the marquee tool. And you can click and drag, and then you see how it looses. You can do a box, a rectangle, all that stuff like that. I want this to be an exact square. So what I'm going to do is hold down Shift, click and drag while holding down Shift. It makes this perfect box. And again, that was the marquee tool up here, M on your keyboard. After you have that selected, all you have to do is hit C or come to your crop tool here. And you'll see it gray out on the right side, and hit Enter, and then hit Enter again, and that crops your image down to a perfect square. Okay, so now I'm going to move this guy around. I can hit Control T with it selected, and that'll allow me to make it change the size, rotate it a little bit if I wanted to. Yada yada yada. Alright. So in order for this to be a brush, it has to be black and white. So what I'll do is I go up to Image, Adjustments, and we are going to go to Desaturation. There we go. Now, a lot of this is really bland and gray. I don't have a lot of highs in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control L, and that's going to bring up my levels here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of balance this out a little bit here. Just a little bit. Okay. So if I'm happy with that, all I have to do is I go up to Edit, Define Brush Preset. It's going to ask me to name it. I'll just leave it as that. Boom. So now, if I hide that and make a new layer, I'm going to hit V, and then if I go all the way to the bottom of my brushes, there's my brush. And then I can go and I can do the same things, just doing with the other guys. Put a little bit of scatter on it maybe. And countdown, and then there we go. So now I have this little rock texture I can use. Alright. That's pretty much it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this, and yeah, have a good day.